The drama of Puyi's life began before he even knew what drama was. Picture this. A boy barely 3 years old is whisked away to the Forbidden City, plucked from his family because Empress Dowager Cixi needed someone fresh on the throne, right after she allegedly poisoned her nephew, Emperor Guangxu. The toddler Puyi didn't exactly hit it off with Cixi. He threw a tantrum the moment he saw her. Who wouldn't be freaked out by a power-hungry grandmother figure you didn't even know existed? Cixi, equally irritated, appointed him emperor, then dropped dead the next day. A foreshadowing of things to come? Oh, absolutely. Fast forward to the coronation ceremony. Less than 3 years old and already over it, Puyi bawled his eyes out while his dad tried to calm him with a prophetic, "Don't cry, it'll be over soon." The court officers gasped. Was he talking about the ceremony or the entire Qing dynasty? Spoiler alert, it was the dynasty, because Puyi would be the last emperor. Growing up in the Forbidden City was a weird mix of loneliness and luxury. His parents? Not allowed to stay. His official mother? The Empress Dowager Longyu, who sent his beloved wet nurse packing when he was 8. Puyi would later write that while he had many mothers, he never felt motherly love. His closest companions? Eunuchs. And boy, did he have fun with them, just not in the way you might think. Flogging eunuchs was part of my daily routine, Puyi confessed in his biography. Talk about an emperor with an early streak of cruelty. But life didn't get any easier. When Puyi turned 16, it was time for him to get married. And like any royal, he was presented with pictures of potential brides. There was just one small problem. The pictures were tiny. Combine that with Puyi's severe nearsightedness, and let's just say he had no clue what he was looking at. His Scottish tutor, Reginald Johnston, had tried to get him glasses, but the court was scandalized at the thought of an emperor wearing spectacles. Puyi first picked Wenxiu, but there was a catch. She was only 13, far too young to be an empress, and she was not the choice that the powers behind the throne wanted. She was relegated to the role of concubine, and Puyi was forced to pick again. This time, he chose Wanrong, the ideal candidate from a good family, and she was crowned empress. But thanks to royal traditions, Wenxiu couldn't just walk away. Once chosen by the emperor, you were his for life. So, Puyi got both women. Now, about that awkward wedding night. When Puyi finally entered the bridal chamber, he lifted Wanrong's veil, took one look, and abruptly left the room. The eunuchs whispered that Puyi preferred the land route of the eunuchs over the water route of the empress, a subtle nod to rumors about his sexuality. Though married, Puyi's relationship with both women was more buddy-buddy than anything romantic. At the beginning, people thought they were too young, just 16 when they got married, but till their last breath, they never had sexual relationship. Puyi later admitted in his biography, "Frankly, I did not know anything about love. In other marriages, husband and wife were equal, but to me, wife and consort were both the slaves and tools of their master." Raised in the imperial system, love was never part of the plan. His marriages, like most of his life, were built on control and duty, not affection. Enter Reginald Johnston the Scotsman, who adored Chinese culture and favored monarchies, became Puyi's teacher at the age of 14. Puyi, who had no problem taunting and disobeying his Manchu tutors, found himself strangely intimidated by Johnston, not just because of his authority, but probably because of his whiteness. Puyi, raised to believe he was the supreme ruler of the known world, found himself shrinking under Johnston's gaze. He later confessed that Johnston made him believe Westerners were the most intelligent, superior people in the world. This blind idolization, born from an emperor raised in isolation and insecurity, made Puyi dangerously easy to manipulate. Case in point, when a massive earthquake struck Japan, Johnston advised Puyi to donate relief funds. The Japanese ambassador took one look at this eager-to-please young ruler and reported back to Tokyo. This man can be easily manipulated. And just like that, Japan had their future puppet lined up. By 1924, China had had enough of Puyi. The warlord Feng Yuxiang seized Beijing and evicted Puyi from the Forbidden City, finally ending the imperial charade. Homeless and humiliated, Puyi was shuffled into exile, moving to the Japanese concession in Tianjin. For the first time, Puyi experienced something resembling freedom. He ditched his dragon robes for Western suits, adopted foreign etiquette, and enjoyed a modern lifestyle. Wanrong, thrilled to escape the suffocating palace, embraced Tianjin's nightlife, fashion, and social scene. Wenxiu, however, she'd had enough. After constant bickering with Wanrong and feeling completely unwanted, she became the first woman in Chinese history to divorce an emperor. Iconic. While Puyi was busy throwing money at warlords who promised to restore his throne, spoiler, they never did. Japan saw its golden opportunity. As they occupied Manchuria, they installed Puyi as the puppet emperor of their newly created state, Manchukuo. Wanrong begged him not to go, calling it treason. But then Yoshiko Kawashima, his flamboyant, cross-dressing, pro-Japanese cousin, stepped in. A Manchu princess turned spy, Yoshiko had been raised in Japan and had zero loyalty to China. She manipulated Puyi right into Japan's hands. He found himself living in Manchukuo as a virtual luxury prisoner, unable to leave without permission. There was always someone keeping a careful watch to ensure he stayed on script. Japan controlled everything, and Puyi was little more than a mascot. Wanrong, neglected and miserable, turned to heavy opium use. Then came the final betrayal. She had an affair with one of Puyi's aides, got pregnant, and the baby was either killed at birth or left to die. She was then confined to her quarters, drowning in her own sorrow and opium. By the time World War II ended, the Japanese abandoned Puyi, leaving him to be captured by Soviet forces. Wanrong, imprisoned, died of malnutrition and opium withdrawal at 39. Her remains were never found. In 1950, Puyi was captured and handed over to the Chinese Communist Party. He was thrown into prison for re-education, forced to reflect on his crimes as a shameful puppet for 9 years. The communists didn't execute him, they repurposed him. His autobiography, From Emperor to Citizen, written under communist supervision, was less a personal confession and more a carefully crafted political message. Sure, he ended up as a gardener and later a researcher, but let's be real, his life was never truly ordinary. He still had minor privileges, and whether he genuinely accepted his fate or simply played along to survive remains a mystery. For the Chinese communist leadership, Puyi, the last emperor, was the perfect symbol of a bygone, corrupt era. If they could show that he had undergone sincere, permanent change, it would be the ultimate PR victory, proving to both China and the world that the new regime had reformed even the most privileged relic of imperial rule. Finally, his last marriage to Li Shuxian is often portrayed as a tragic reflection of Puyi's life. Some say she was a nurse, while others allege she was a gold-digging former dance hall hostess, expecting wealth and status. Instead, she found herself tied to a man with sexual dysfunction and without the riches or influence she had anticipated. Her request for divorce went all the way to Premier Zhou Enlai, who blocked it, proving once again that Puyi never truly escaped being a pawn in someone else's game. He died in Beijing from kidney cancer and heart disease on October 17, 1967, at the age of 61. Some say Red Guards at the hospital refused to treat him until he pulled some strings. In the end, he remained what he had always been, a man controlled by forces bigger than himself. So, there you have it. The emperor who never really ruled, the man who never stepped out of the shadow, from the cradle to the communist reform prison. Puyi's life was nothing if not a constant game of control, manipulation, and tragedy. And though he lived through multiple regimes, Puyi never got to control his own fate.